everybody. Welcome to another GeneaVlogger live stream. On today's live stream, I'll be ranking genealogy TV shows. So it's hopefully going to be a pretty interesting live stream. I'm going to try to see about showing some stuff if possible. I have to be really, really careful about what I show with TV shows because with copyrights and all of that, for one, I have to worry about being demonetized on the live stream. Which, this is kind of how I make my money. But at the same time, I also have to really worry about getting a copyright strike. So I don't even know if I'm going to try to show clips because I once did a reaction to Finding Your Roots when one of their commercials for one of the seasons years ago. And they they took down that video. I forgot what they did exactly. It wasn't as strong as a copyright strike, but it was like, this video is not available at all. And then I think I had another Finding Your Roots one that I tried a similar commercial thing, and it wasn't quite as harsh, but it was like, I just was like, I'm never going to try Finding Your Roots again. They do not make it so you can do reactions. And, especially on the commercials, you'd think, well, they pay for commercials to be played places. Why wouldn't they want a reactor to play it for their video? Whatever. But anyway, main point being, I don't want to worry too much about that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and we'll do the hellos from everybody. I see we had a few people who were here quite early, including a few that I recognize who are here quite often. Pretty much all of you. So hello. I'm just going to do it real quick today. Big shout out to Blackberry Rose, though, one of our wonderful admins. Everybody give her a big thumbs up in the chat. Ironically, sardonically. Oh, yeah, you commented earlier, too. Yeah, you were on early. We're just going to click through a whole bunch of you all. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, a lot of people coming in today. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and as I go through, I'll definitely want to see what everyone thinks. Oh, and Blackberry Rose already gets it. Yep. The map behind me is the map of Odessa. I think I had it up in the last stream and nobody said it, or at least I missed it if anyone said it. Oh, yeah. We got lots and lots of people. So, okay. So, for those who aren't familiar, I use the same website for the genealogy website tier ranking. Let's see how I want that to show. Is that going to be better? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really need to be that large. Hopefully everyone can see the thumbnails of all the different shows well enough so that you can tell. I'm trying to I just realized, I think I use my cursor all the time to try to point stuff out, and I don't think you all can see oh, wait, no, you can see my cursor. Okay. Okay, so we have this list now. This is actually something I put together a few years ago with the idea of basically kind of doing a video or something like that, because I did do a video at one point that was my top 5 genealogy TV shows. Let's see. Pull it up for everybody to see. I don't need that. Yeah, I don't know if I have. Did I set the audio up? Can you all hear the audio of the video? Gosh, look. Back when I shaved my head. So, but yeah, the top 5. So we'll be getting into those today. But yeah, let me know if you all can hear the audio. I don't know if I set that up right where No audio. Okay. Let's redo that then. To share audio, I have to only share through tab. All right, that's fine. Whatever. Oh, you can hear it now? Thumbs up. This is my band, by the way. If you can hear this.
Starting out at number 5, Genealogy Roadshow. Genealogy Roadshow started in.
We'll get into this. I won't play it. That's better. Yes. Okay. Cool. So, all right. Well, this is a old video, 4 years old. Came out September 13th, 2019. So technically, almost 4.5 years old. Crazy. Yeah, the old intro music was a song from my band, my old band. All right, so let's get back to the tier list. So there's a lot of shows on here, and I think when I did this, I asked a bunch of people what are shows that you know that you would consider genealogy shows, and I kind of put them all in here. So there were some that I wasn't really familiar with. Part of the reason why I did that was so I could learn about genealogy shows. But I never actually did the rankings. So now we're going to do it now, obviously. And so I guess the way that we'll go through it, for those who are unfamiliar with tier rankings, S tier is like top tier. That's like the best. Then A tier's next best, B, C, D, and then never saw. So D is like, would be considered the worst show in my opinion, and then not too terrible, okay, and then, you know, pretty good, and then really good, and then absolutely amazing, I guess would be a way to say it. And so I'm trying to think how I want to start this, if I want to start with series or not. So, okay, we'll start kind of in a series way. And first we'll start with African American Lives. Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar with African American Lives, this is the predecessor to Finding Your Roots. This was the first Henry Louis Gates Jr. genealogy based TV show through PBS. And it was focused only on African Americans. I think Oprah was on it. Oprah was on it. Whoopi Goldberg. I think Chris Rock was on it. I'm trying to remember who else. I think was that the one Morgan Freeman was on. It might have been that one or the next one, but this was the original one. And instead of doing it where they do it now, where it's like 1 or 2 celebrities per episode and it's an hour-long episode, it was a 4-episode series. I think each episode was an hour long, and each episode would focus on a different era for all of the guests. And so it was kind of a really interesting way to look at it versus the way they do it today. And I think, let's see, we're not going to watch it. Obviously I can't, actually it's probably good that I'm not going to have the audio on there. But there are some episodes that you can watch through. Oh, of course, I wasn't sharing it in the proper way. Let's share this properly. So I don't know if you can see all of them, if they're all available. I guess they all are. Or wait, no, this is just one episode, African American. Oh yeah, so there was 2 of them actually. Yeah, there's African American Lives and African American Lives 2. And so they had each episode that you're seeing broken down. So there was The Past is Another Country, then We Come from People, then A Way Out of No Way, and then The Road Home. Those were the 4 episodes of the second one. And it's just the one. They don't have, I'm the one that made this. Yeah, so I didn't upload both. So we'll have to represent both in this. But there was a 1 and a 2. Chris Rock was on it. Yeah, so this was honest. I mean, this was really really good. Highly, highly recommend watching it. I wonder if it is available through PBS. I find it's odd that PBS has a lot of stuff that you just can't watch. Like even Finding Your Roots, I actually pay for the PBS donation thing, which gives you the PBS Compass access or whatever it's called. I forgot. Oh, you can apparently watch it on Amazon Prime Video. So if you have Prime, you can, I think, go watch African American Lives. But yeah, like I even though I pay for the, like I think you can't watch like a lot of the first 7 or 8 seasons of Finding Your Roots or something ridiculous. It's kind of annoying, and yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Okay, it is on Amazon Prime. So yeah. All right. So actually, you know, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about when I did the first tier ranking, and I kind of had a set of criteria that I was looking for to kind of help rank it. Because when I did that ranking, I didn't want to necessarily rank it in terms of how good each episode or website was. It was more of how much I use it, really. Because with some of these TV shows at the same time, I've seen some of them, especially after going through this, but there are some that I haven't even seen, which there is a never saw option. So I don't know. Trying to think of criteria to use. Obviously, enjoyability, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll just kind of wing it. We won't use criteria. So with African American Lives 1 and 2, I did really enjoy it, and I liked how they did the episodes where it was one single episode covering all of the guests, but focusing on a singular aspect that affects them all. And by doing it that in the narrative way that they did, it makes it really interesting because you get a much wider range of a view of a certain time period through these family trees. Because one thing that I find with genealogy is that it brings out how nuanced history truly was, especially because it shows often that people were outliers in the way that we would think of people back in those times or in those circumstances or whatever. So it's just, you know, it gives it a really interesting twist to see that. I'm trying to remember, you know, it's been a while since I've seen them. I think these ones did use DNA, but this was when DNA was really in its infancy and autosomal DNA wasn't even really a thing. It was basically just Y DNA. And so with Y DNA, they might not, I don't even know if they had mitochondrial DNA at that time, but they were using that site African Ancestry DNA. Is that it? Yeah, that's right. Which in a recent stream, I talked about this site because Shannon Christmas, who is a very well-respected, well-known genetic genealogist who specializes in African American ancestry, talks about some of the issues with African ancestry. And I think it's even, yeah, here, right here. Let's see if we can increase that. So he even mentions Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. misinterpreted results rank among the most disconcerting example of African ancestry's low quality analysis. African ancestry's Rick Kittles told Professor Gates his Y's DNA signature was Egyptian. However, more comprehensive Y DNA testing revealed Professor Gates had the same Y DNA haplogroup as an Isle of the Nine hostages, suggesting European ancestry on his direct paternal line. This discrepancy inspired Professor Gates to partner with Family Tree DNA to start African DNA, a company that would provide higher resolution DNA testing for African Americans and include DNA relatives, the most accurate and useful data in genetic genealogy. Now, I don't know if African DNA was created. I imagine if it had been, it would have been pretty well promoted. Well, actually, geez, I guess it says it right here. So yeah, I'm not familiar with this. What happened with that? This article's from 2019, but just something to note. But that's kind of one thing with it is because African American Lives was the show that used that as the DNA. I don't remember how in depth they used it though. There is that part to it, that it is an older show that has a lot of outdated stuff and some stuff that some people don't really find that reliable. Like, my understanding with the DNA test, the African Ancestry DNA, is not necessarily that it's as much of a scam as it is that they're kind of overhyping results that have a very low confidence to them. We're always talking about confidence on a lot of these streams, especially with DNA testing and stuff like that, about how confident are you in the results. And with their DNA testing, it's like older DNA testing. They're only testing, I think, like 13 markers for Y DNA, which for anyone who does Y DNA testing, like 37 markers nowadays is considered really low. A lot of people are doing the 111 test. There used to be the 67 test, which is what I took. But then there's also the big Ys, which, 500 and 700. I don't know if both are still available. I think it's just 700. But, 13 versus 37, which is the low end, you can kind of see why it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's not really as much data. So there is that to consider. But I think overall, I'm probably going to put this in the A tier, especially because it's such a major predecessor to a lot of the big shows that came around. And in my opinion, these shows, all three of the Henry Louis Gates Jr. series, which we'll get into the next two in a second, but those were the ones that I would credit as the most inspiring for me to really dive into genealogy even deeper than I already had been. Now as I talk about it, I think I'm going to put it in B tier. It is a really good show. I think I'm going to move it just to B tier, just in the sense of that it is older. There is that sense to it that it's not necessarily outdated data, but there's a lot of stuff to it that maybe isn't really as amazing nowadays. But continuing with the Henry Louis Gates Jr. series, then we're going to talk about Faces of America. And for those who are unfamiliar with Faces of America, basically the timeline of this whole thing was that they did African American Lives, then they did African American Lives 2. And the way that Henry Louis Gates Jr. tells it is that he then received a letter from a Jewish woman who basically said, you've done these series where you're only tracing African Americans, but what about everybody else? There's so many other people with amazing ancestries. And I think the way he put it was that the letter was kind of framing it in a way of like, don't, be diverse. I don't remember exactly how he put it, because I actually saw Henry Louis Gates Jr. give a speech about this live in Orlando back in 2019 at a Jewish genealogy conference. But basically that led him to be like, yeah, you know what? She's right. And then he created Faces of America, which was basically like African American Lives in the 4-episode setup where they had all these various guests. And then each episode was kind of based around a certain time period and would cover all of the guests. And this time it had lots and lots of guests. Like I remember Stephen Colbert is on that. I think it's, let's see, who else? Let me pull up. Let's see if you can find it anywhere. It looks like it's available on PBS. No, it's not available on PBS. See if even myself as a Passport member, I'm not streaming this, am I? Okay. I don't want to be trying to log into something while I'm streaming. Okay, let's see. Sign in Successful. PBS Passport, that's what it's called. Yeah, I mean, I guess they don't have them available. No episodes available online. So there's the page. For those wondering, actually, I'll just leave that there. Yeah, I guess you can see clips of it. It looks like there's clips of it on YouTube and stuff like that. But let's see if we can just find the guests. Aha, there we go. Yes, that's my local station. So yeah, so these were the guests. So you can see wide range of people, and I believe, yeah, I don't know. Never mind. I'm not gonna. Yeah, but anyway, so they had these 12 guests where they then went into all of the information on them, and it was based. Okay, so yeah, so they had the 4 episodes. Our American Stories, Becoming American. I wonder if we can, or sorry, we can't. Yeah. So you can see kind of, and usually the way that it would work was episode 1 would be, the recent past. So they get into the parents and stuff like that. Episode 2, they get a little bit further back. Episode 3, they then get like, or I guess episode 2 would be like 19th century stuff from what I remember. Like a lot of it's probably like immigration stories. Yeah. Becoming American. So 1820s to 1924. Then episode 3 goes further back and starts talking about, the New World stuff and, a lot earlier stuff. And then I think episode 4, yeah, that's when they start getting into DNA evidence stuff. And I think, I'm not 100%, but I think this was the first one that used autosomal DNA. I don't know if they used autosomal DNA in either of the African American live series. If anyone knows, let me know. I'm going to keep my eye on chat. Actually, geez, I should check chat. It's a chatty chat today, a little bit. I see a lot of people talking about Skip Gates. I actually got to meet him at that conference, and I was getting my camera ready on the side of like some room way off, away from everybody, and they were bringing Henry Louis Gates Jr. through. It was actually Adam Brown who was running that conference, very well respected, well known Jewish genealogist who runs the Avatenu Y-DNA project. But Adam was bringing Henry Louis Gates around, and they had a crew of people, and they saw me, and Henry Louis Gates Jr. made a beeline, just turned and headed towards me, and came and shook my hand and was like, hi, it's nice, nice to meet you. And then he said, so where'd you get that red hair? And I was so flustered, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think I said something like, oh yeah, it's on both sides of my family. But it was like, it's like starstruck. So, but he was such a cool guy. And then I wanted to take photos with him, but then my camera died, and yeah, the rest of that night was unfortunately not my best night. But it was awesome getting to meet him. Is DNA Family Secrets there? I've only seen YouTube clips. I don't know. I don't think so, because this is Ancestors in the Attic. Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, that's one that I'll have to look into. Let's see, DNA Family Secrets. I'm just going to have it pulled up on the side. Yeah, there's technically a few different shows that I'm probably missing from here, especially one-offs that like the BBC and CNN and stuff have done, because one of my cousins, a genealogist with Ancestry UK, Laura House, has been featured in multiple shows tracing family ancestries. And one of the shows she did was one where it was actually tracing like random people's ancestry to show that you could find royal roots. And she like presented that to them and like introduced them to, oh gosh, what the royal lady who came from the Russian family that actually they escaped Russia. The Ivanov, I think. I don't know. Yeah. So if anyone knows, but yeah. So all right. So yeah, I have that pulled up. We'll look into that later. Yeah, plenty of Who Do You Think You Are? Yeah, I have 3 of them in there. Australia, UK, and US. Yeah, that one I don't know. DNA Journeys with Celebs. Okay, we'll have that one off to the side too. Wow, yeah, so many shows. So many shows. I don't think it was Romanov. You know what? Let's see. BBC. See if I can find this. It was actually like a recent thing within the past. Oh, come on. Reject all. Reject all. Save next. Okay, there we go. So it was this thing. Commoner discovers so whatever this Princess Olga, that's who it was. That's who I was thinking of. But what's her? It was Romanov. Granted, they're spelling with FF, but same difference. For some reason, I thought it was Ivanov or something. But yeah, Romanov. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that was my cousin. So okay, back to Faces of America. So, this was a show that I really enjoyed. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Obviously, it seems probably because it's not really available. But it was a really good show. I wish they would make it available to see again. And so I think I'm going to rank that one A tier because it's, in a sense, it's basically just like African American lives. But, I think, being that it's the first time they're using autosomal DNA, the first time that, or not the first time, but, the first time that they're, doing a wide array of ancestral backgrounds, not just African American. Yeah. And then continuing in the Henry Louis Gates Jr. series, Finding Your Roots, which was basically the final culmination, because the story goes that after they did Faces of America, they basically had to rename it because Faces of America was actually copywritten and they didn't realize. And I think they ran into legal trouble with it. And so when they decided to change it, they decided that they would change the format from that 4-episode format to doing singular episodes, just featuring, I think in the first season, they would do like 2 or 3 guests an episode. But then over time, they've dwindled it down to just 2 or 1. Maybe there's been 3 guests in episodes still. But it feels like a lot of just 2 people episodes. I'm just going to go ahead and plop it down in S tier because that's definitely an S tier. But, with this show, it has been the most influential, I feel like, in terms of modern genealogy overall. It seems to be the show that whenever I talk to people who aren't really that well versed in genealogy and stuff, it seems to be more well known than Who Do You Think You Are, in my opinion. Just in talking to random people and being like, yeah, genealogy, this and stuff, like Finding Your Roots, or even, like the show from that guy from Harvard on PBS, or, stuff like that. For some reason, it seems to have a much broader audience than Who Do You Think You Are, at least in the US. I'm sure in the UK and elsewhere throughout the world, throughout the world, I'm guessing it's probably different. but I don't know for sure. But I would assume that just because, American-based show on PBS, publicly supported test or whatever they're considered. So yeah, Drea says, hands up if you cry at every Finding Your Roots episode. Yeah, no, I've definitely cried at some, but I think there's one show that I've probably cried at the most, and that's one that a lot of people want me to do reactions to, and we're not going to get to it just yet, but I think people know which one I'm saying. So Weeping Scorpion, who's in the Faroe Islands, says, I've actually never seen an episode of Finding Your Roots. I guess because coming from Europe, Who Do You Think You Are? It's just much easier to find. Yeah, I mean, Who Do You Think You Are has tons and tons of various country-based series, I guess you could say. The most well-known ones are obviously the UK version, the US version, and then the Australia version. But there was, I think, like a season in Canada. There's a New Zealand version. There's a Dutch version. There's, all sorts of various language versions of Who Do You Think You Are? On top of, I know there's lots of different TV shows around the world that are, in those languages that are, whatever non-English languages. So I probably would not know that well about them. But with Finding Your Roots being American-based, for one, I feel like it cuts out a lot of the non-English speaking countries. Granted, a lot of people speak English, but I feel like, even so, you go to a country where they don't really speak English that much. They just kind of use it more as a, tool for when they need to use it mostly. I'm guessing, those countries aren't going to be playing English-based stuff that much unless it's like a really big, well-known thing or, something that just hits in that country for whatever reason. And I'm guessing Finding Your Roots, talking about Americans and their ancestry, isn't going to be that interesting to a lot of those kinds of folks. But I think it's really just mostly comes down to the, PBS and that kind of a station that it is, and that it's just, that's a very American-based station. It's like a lot of the local channels and, those shows don't even get that huge of an audience in the US, I think, so yeah. All right. Yeah, but very worthwhile to check out if you can. I think if you have a VPN, you can set yourself in the US and then go and watch it on PBS for free. Although it is somewhat limited on what episodes you can, which is why I got the passport in the first place. And then they started to block stuff from even passport users. Nope, you can't watch these episodes. Like, I remember one time I wanted to go watch the Andy Samberg episode because I just love that episode because it's such an amazing show of how you can utilize DNA and the paper trail to figure all of this stuff out and then for it to circle back around together. But I went to go watch that episode and you're not allowed. Doesn't matter that I pay for passport. Nope, not allowed. Okay. Let's see. Oh, VPN. Wait. Sorry, I missed. Yeah, I'm based in London, UK, but I just use a VPN to pretend. Yeah, definitely. And if you're in the US and you want to watch a lot of the BBC stuff, if you have a VPN, just set yourself in the UK, and then you can watch a lot of the BBC stuff, which there's a lot of good stuff there too. Portuguese, Who Do You Think You Are? Weeping Scorpion says Danish and Swedish versions. Nikolai Koster-Valda was on the Danish one. I'm sure I just butchered that. Is the research that is done on Finding Your Roots even that impressive? I think it varies. I don't know exactly how they do their research setup. I've always really wanted to be a part of it. Wish they would have reached out to me. And I know that I have a lot of genealogy colleagues genealogy colleagues, I guess would be the best way to put it, who have been tapped to help research stuff in the show because, as I try to show in a lot of my episodes with the YouTuber Family Tree series, it really does take a lot of specialty knowledge when you get into new areas that you're just not familiar with. And when you do something like Finding Your Roots, where you're tracing all these various people's ancestries, you constantly run into just niche towns and cities and population groups and whatever, that it takes kind of an expert to really get into it. And so I know they tap a lot of people for it, but at the same time, with Jewish genealogy stuff, there's a lot of stuff that I've seen them say that is kind of wrong. They've said multiple episodes, like, a lot of records aren't available because they were destroyed during World War II. And that's, while it's slightly true, it's kind of more of a myth than it is true, because for one, a lot of the records that have been destroyed were mostly destroyed not necessarily because of war and stuff, but more of just like different errors, like the Kamenets I can never pronounce it, but the Kamenets Pulaski archive, there was a fire in like 2001 or something, which destroyed a lot of stuff. But then in a lot of recent years, through digitization efforts, not only have they actually discovered that a lot of what they thought was destroyed in that fire is still there, and a lot of it's a little bit more readable than they thought. But on top of that, there's also copies of various records they thought were destroyed that were in other archives for various reasons. So I think it's a sliding scale. There's going to be some research that they've done that is very meh, and then other stuff that's really amazing. And I feel like that's with a lot of genealogists. I mean, even for my episodes of YouTuber Family Trees, there's some episodes where I am doing a ton of research that takes a lot of effort, and I'm like, really proud of myself, even though it's like took a lot to just find a little. And then others where the story is just kind of like on a platter, and you just kind of like, okay, well, here it is, and here's that, and whatever. Like with the Drew Durnil stuff, it seemed like that at first, but then it actually was like, it was a little bit of information here and a little bit of information here and a little bit here. And like, there were biographies and autobiographies, and they were only, short stuff. They, it wouldn't even be considered really a book, more of like a pamphlet or, a couple of pages. And so you'd get information from this person, then a little bit more from this, and then get information using the real records. And so it was like having to knit together this entire story, and it took a lot of work and research to really confirm each piece of that story. So I kind of give them a little leeway, having done my own sort of stuff with that. Like, there's some episodes that I've done that I'm just like, I mean, I love the episode and it's great information, but like on the genealogy side, I really didn't do that much. I found people who had done stuff already. But there's definitely been stuff that they've put out there on Finding Your Roots that's like, I disagree. All right, let's see. Try to jump through a lot of these and get back to the ranking. Yeah, I wish they had the British genealogy shows on Amazon BritBox. I haven't used Amazon BritBox yet, but I know that there's a lot of stuff on there. But shame that there's none of the genealogy shows. But try that VPN, Brian. You might be able to get it. Okay, let's jump back into this. So we've gone through the Finding Your Roots. So the next most well-known show, actually, I think we'll wait on that. We'll kind of keep going this way. So, all right, the next one is going to be Ancestors. Now, this is one that is a super old show, and I actually posted an episode of this in the Discord because it was like the episode was about technology, but this was 2000, and they were basically like talking about how computer databases were going to change everything, and just like, I mean, it was just kind of funny because like for today's genealogists, it was like, this is what we use every day. And they were kind of talking about like, this is the future sort of thing. And it's really kind of crazy to see 25 years difference. But with this show, it is old school in not just like that it's old, but also the presentation is very, very dry educational, and kind of along the lines of the stuff that like when I first got onto YouTube, I was like, I want to make my videos much more engaging and interesting to a wider audience, because myself as a young genealogist, you know, when I started getting like really in depth into genealogy, I was just getting, you know, as a senior in college, as 21, I think I was 21, 22, I can't remember exactly. And, you know, I'd been doing genealogy for years, but I never got into it in depth. And then when I started to, and started getting in all this, you know, content, reading blogs and stuff, the stuff that I would hate the most was all of this dry educational, very just like, you know, boring stuff, which is one of the reasons why the shows like African American Lives and Faces of American, Finding Your Roots, and Who Do You Think You Are really stood out. So Ancestors is definitely an interesting show. I think anyone can watch it for free on BYU. If you're not in the US, you may have to use a VPN to set yourself in the US to see it. But there's only like 19 episodes of it. It's really interesting information, but it is basically really outdated, really dry. And, you know, it's probably a great predecessor for a lot of stuff. But honestly, I'm going to put it in D tier, because it's one of the big things I'm thinking too is like, it's the type of thing where it's really difficult to put it on and get through it, in my opinion. You know, it's just, you know, especially because a lot of stuff is outdated. But even if it wasn't outdated, even if it was talking about stuff for the future, like from a 2024 perspective, it's just so boring. Yeah. So, all right. And actually, I guess before I do continue, let's see if we can pull up. Yeah. So this was the episode that I was watching before, which you can see June 11th, 2000. And it's just like, just this old school, it's not really going to matter, but, you know, they just, yeah, it's just old school. Oh, wait, no, this is the getting started. I didn't want to show that one. I wanted to show the other one. So, and if a lot of you probably recognize Megan Smolniak. Oh, the monitors give me flashbacks. Oh, you guys can't even see that, can you? Is the video coming through? Video's not even coming through. Wow, interesting. Huh. Funny. Okay, well, doesn't matter. So you can go and watch it at some point. Yeah, not coming through. Okay, so next episode, Ancestors in the Attic. Now, this is a Canadian-based show, and when I first decided to, well, not first decided, but when I decided to do this, when I was getting ready today, I was going through these just kind of make sure, like, okay, I do kind of know each show, even if I haven't necessarily watched it much. And this one, I was like, you know, because of the logo, you can't even see what it says. And I was like, what show is this? And I asked my Discord, and luckily somebody was able to tell me Ancestors in the Attic. And I knew I recognized the name of it, looked it up, and I realized, for one, it was a show that I hadn't really seen much. It's Canadian based, so that's a big reason. So it just wasn't easily available to see. But I did recognize that I had seen clips of it, because I remember thinking that the host sounded like an off-brand Rob Lowe. So if anyone's even seen the show, go and watch it. I actually, there's a Vimeo that you can see of it. I watched one. Is this it? Yeah, I watched it before. Like basically while I was getting ready today, like getting all this stuff ready for my dogs, and you know, making myself lunch and all that stuff. I was putting these videos on, just, you know, be like, okay, do I recognize it? And so here's Ancestors. So here's Ancestors in the Attic. And with Ancestors in the Attic, I have seen the clips, like I said, but I watched through the full episode, this one, and it was really good. It was, the way that I would put it, it was kind of a mixture of Finding Your Roots and Who Do You Think You Are, in the sense that with Finding Your Roots, it's you have a person learning about their ancestry, which, I mean, Who Do You Think You Are is too. Actually, I guess maybe it's not really as much Finding Your Roots. It's much more just Who Do You Think You Are. But Who Do You Think You Are is basically, you know, the celebrity follows the trail. And so often they'll first talk to their family or, you know, where they know. And then they go from there to then, you know, well, what's the first place to go and talk? And they talk to some sort of specialist and so on and so forth. And with Ancestors in the Attic, that was kind of what happened with this episode, was that it was basically, you know, he was trying to learn about his family history and would go to the different places to kind of learn about it. They would talk about what he knew, and then, you know, the history connected to this stuff. So, like, yeah, here he is, like, talking to some guy who's like, okay, well, here, I've pulled these records for you, and here's what we can figure out. And so, you know, follows the story. And this one was absolutely amazing. It's about this guy's grandfather who, his grandfather, who was a fighter pilot or flew planes in World War II, got shot down for 6 months and then popped back up, and they didn't know the story behind it. So he was going to the story. And so, you know, this is really my only frame of reference. I do remember clips because I remember thinking, why does this guy sound like Rob Lowe? Is that Rob Lowe? And then it's like, you see the guy where this guy right here, this guy sounds like Rob Lowe. And it's like, no, that's not Rob Lowe. But he sounds just like him, in my opinion. So, yeah. So what did I do with it? Oh, here it is. So I thought it was really, really great. And I definitely want to watch more of it. I think it has a potential for S tier, but I would put it at A tier. It was definitely enjoyable. All right. I'm going to do something that I actually haven't really done before in a stream, and I'm going to take a short break, like just 2 minutes. So while I do that, you all enjoy some streaming background music. Let's set that. Let's do New City Strolling for you, and then I'll be back in just a second. So, yeah. I'm back. You didn't even have to worry about a countdown or nothing. So hopefully you all didn't miss me too much. However long I was away, for a minute or so. So yeah, so jumping back in. So I guess let's just keep continuing on this way. So with A New Leaf. Now I think this was an NBC show. I'm not 100% sure. Let's actually look that up. But I know I've seen this show. It was either NBC or CBS or, one of those types. Yeah, it was NBC. And, I saw a good amount of episodes of these. Personally, I didn't find them that interesting. I mean, they were, interesting, but it was kind of like just not presented that intriguingly, I guess. I don't remember all the stories. I know I probably watched like the first 10 episodes or so before I kind of was like, yeah, I'm good with it. And then I think I've seen, I don't know if I don't think they're still doing them. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so it was just the one season. It probably didn't do that great. But I remember them actually advertising this at my first Roots Tech in 2019. But, I mean, it was kind of, from what I remember, they would have random people that they would choose. It seemed like it was kind of a show to kind of try to hit that, that thing that people say with, why do they always have to be celebrities? It's always well-known people. Why can't they do random people? And every time they try it, it kind of doesn't work that well because, unfortunately, it's the celebrities and stuff that get the non-genealogy crowd to watch this stuff, which, in my own experience, the genealogy crowd is not that large. And, it's kind of the same reason why, YouTuber Family Trees series, I try to find big YouTubers that are going to draw, so I understand that. But in terms of the actual content and stuff, like, I always found it was kind of presented in a very just basic, boring, like, family I don't know, family friendly style, like, happy go lucky sort of stuff. I guess I don't really know how to put it. It's kind of hard to say, but I never found it that intriguing, but it wasn't like super terrible or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in C tier. Oh gosh, give me a second. Okay, no worries. Dog boys are on the couch now. All right. So yeah, so New Leaf goes there. Let's see. Yeah, Finding Your Roots is too American a show. Looking and waiting for a tear and drama. Yeah, I'll get into that in a second for some of these shows. I watch them on YouTube when they're, and genealogically, there isn't much you can do with the info. Finding Your Roots, as time has gone on, they've gotten further away from the genealogy information and more into just the narrative stuff. But I feel like, especially in the early episodes, they really did get into a lot of the genealogy stuff. But yeah, I definitely understand. You're not American based, may not really be that interesting to you. Matt Baker's here. Hey, swings by, sees Finding Your Root, next tier, happy. Yeah. So it doesn't always have to be just United States Americans. It can also be Canadian Americans. So yeah. YouTuber Family Tree series, S tier. I can't rate it on my own, but hey, if you all want to rate it S tier, go right ahead. So, yeah, a lot of. All right. So, continuing on, now we're going to get into Who Do You Think You Are? So, let's just line all three up right over here. So, with Who Do You Think You Are? I think I'll start out with the originator, the BBC version. And the BBC version, this is probably one of the earlier genealogy shows in terms of before like the big modern boom of genealogy, I'd like to call it, which kind of really came about because of a lot of these TV shows, because of Finding Your Roots and Who Do You Think You Are. But yeah, okay, so the BBC one came out 2004. So, let's see. Yeah, 2004. So came out a long time ago, and I did a couple of reactions to them. I think I did a bunch of reactions to Jeremy Clarkson's episode because they had the Kill in Her Jar stuff. But with Who Do You Think You Are, BBC, it's really kept up in terms of quality. You kind of have to have a VPN in the US to be able to watch the BBC version of the recent episodes, but there's a lot that they are releasing online. Like actually YouTubers, wait, hold on one second. Getting a message. See in a second, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Where was I? But yeah, so they've really kept up with it. But if you're in the US, you really need a VPN to see it. But there's a lot on YouTube on the on their channel. And I've actually thought about doing reactions to Who Do You Think You Are again. Just because, for one, unlike Finding Your Roots, they actually released all of the copyright claims that came through, because they do have auto copyright claim stuff. But every time I'd submit it, they would release their claim and I would be all happy. And so, yeah, so they have full episodes, both of the US and the UK version. So you can get to see a lot of them. But the UK one is really, really good. I think one of my favorite ones, I wonder if, was Brendan O'Carroll Girls, where it goes into, it's basically a murder mystery of an episode. It's just one. It's about just one ancestor. Funny. So that, but BBC, Who Do You Think You Are? I definitely think that's going to go S tier. Now, the US version, it is good. It is not as good as the BBC version. The best way that I can put it is, it spins a lot of this, what I like, NBC fluff to it. So it's like when you watch the episodes, it feels like you watch the same thing happen 4 or 5 times, because they show you in the beginning, here's what's going to happen, and then things move along, and then they're like, okay, next up, here's what's going to happen, and then finally the thing happens, and then they're like, so here's what happened. And so it's like they repeat a lot of the same stuff, and they kind of do that in the BBC one, but nowhere near as much as what they do with the US one, which I think is now on TLC. It started out on NBC, then it went to TLC, but it's good. And I think one of the things that really sets Who Do You Think You Are apart from Finding Your Roots is the fact that it's a lot of on-site stuff. Finding Your Roots did have some of that. Faces of America and African American Lives, I think both had much more of that commonly than Finding Your Roots. Finding Your Roots is more of sitting in a room, and then Henry Louis Gates Jr. tells them their ancestry, and obviously I love that show. But with Who Do You Think You Are, them going to the places, and they're going to the buildings that it happened, and they're going and meeting people and archivists and genealogists and all these people that are, it kind of shows the full story. Especially it gives an idea of the research too. Although Who Do You Think You Are certainly has that more old school research feel of, you got to go to the place to find the information. Whereas we now live in the modern world where it's a lot easier to do that. Even if the records aren't digitized, you don't have to necessarily go to France to get the French records you need. You might need to just email a genealogist there, or, contact the right archivist there to go get it. So I'm going to put the US version in the A tier because I think it is really good, but not quite as good as BBC. Actually, I'm not even going to do A tier. I think I'm going to make it a B tier one, just because of how much fluff and all of that it does with it. Still a very interesting one, and obviously you can watch the full episodes on this channel because they give you a mixture of them, which I wonder if they have playlists of like US versus UK. Doesn't look like they do necessarily, but you can watch the full episodes of the US and the UK versions. See if I can find, because it's a lot of the UK ones that we're seeing right now. Trying to see if we can find the US ones. The Martin Freeman one was a good one. That's an older one. Okay, yeah, here we go. Jerome Bettis, Helen Hunt, Reba McEntire, Rosie O'Donnell, Tim McGraw, Lionel Richie, yeah, Spike Lee, Steve Buscemi. The Steve Buscemi one was a really good one too, because I remember they went to go like to a bar that he and his wife had like just eaten at, and then I forgot what the connection was, but he had like a direct connection with that building specifically. So now the third one, even though there's a lot of Who Do You Think You Are, and actually let's see. Okay, yeah. So international versions. So Who Do You Think You Are? So I mean, here's all of the different versions that at least have their own page on Wikipedia. So the American, Australian, Canadian, Irish, the Danish, Norwegian, Swedish. But going back, we can see all of the different versions. So I don't know if they're all necessarily actually like part of Who Do You Think You Are, or necessarily something that whoever made this table in Wikipedia decided, you know what, that's going to be the thing, that we'll put in there for it. But yeah, so, and then similar programs. So, but I have seen a lot of the Australian version, which is why I put it in there. There were a lot of episodes on YouTube. At least there used to be. I don't know if there still are. Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's just all under that same "Who do you think you are" banner. So, yeah, but the one that I remember was a footballer, I think. Who do you think you are? It was like one of the first episodes. Yeah, that's right. Jack Thompson. And he, like, his father died during World War II, I think maybe it was. Yeah, they don't have it here. And he ended up, like, talking to some of the men that were with his father when his father was dying from his wounds. I think it was that episode. I think so. Maybe it was a different episode. I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's take a look at the episodes. No, it was Ron Barassi. I think that's who I was talking. Yeah. Because his father, died in the siege of Tobruk. So let's see. They don't have, but great episode. That's the point. So I think I'm going to put that in A tier because from what I remember of it, it had way less fluff than the US version. But I definitely felt like I enjoyed the BBC version much, much more. So yeah, wow, lots of comments. Yeah. All right. So continuing on now. So now Genealogy Roadshow. Now this is another PBS show. This was a really interesting one because, the idea was basically like Antiques Roadshow where they go around from city to city and then they do all sorts of various people's ancestries. And part of the idea being, getting the public the ability to see a lot of stuff or, have genealogists do free genealogy for them. Just like, with all the other shows, but then also kind of in that sense of like, okay, we're going to have a lot of people submit, but then we'll be able to find lots of really interesting stuff. And they had 3 different genealogists on there: Kenyatta Berry, Joshua Taylor, and the third one's blanking on me. And I even met her at a Roots Tech, I think, once. Mary Tedesco. That's right. Mary Tedesco. And yeah, let's see. There's okay. Funny. I pulled it up on Wikipedia and it said American TV series, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, is there a British or another version of it? Yeah. But it was a really fun show. They only did these 3 seasons, but you can see they went from different cities to different cities. And I think part of the enjoyment with the different cities too is that when you're going to or you're going to different cities, you're going to find a lot of people that are going to represent the history of that area because they're living there because of the history that caused their family to live there. So it is a very fun show. I don't think it's quite as enjoyable as Who Do You Think You Are or African American Lives. it's certainly fun to watch. But it's just, in my opinion, it's kind of presented in that old school boring way. So that's going to go into C tier. Yeah, it's Antiques Roadshow for genealogy. So now we'll get into another show that has multiple versions. And I think there's other versions than these two, but we're just going to talk about these two. And this is Long Lost Family. So we have the TLC version and the BBC version. And we're going to talk about the BBC one first. For those unfamiliar with this show, Long Lost Family is a show dedicated to finding specific family members for people. So it's not really as much of a genealogy show of like building family tree as it is of like adoptees trying to find their family members, or birth mothers trying to find the children they gave away, siblings trying to find, their siblings that they lost, or just, other relatives for whatever reason. Most of the time it was adoptee cases, whether it's the birth mom or the child looking for the parents, because there was a lot of both ways. But there were a few other sort of stories that were different ones as well. It is quite an intriguing show. They do present it in a very interesting way of, here's how we kind of took the steps in the research. Very simplified, which I understand, because that's kind of what I do with my YouTuber Family Tree series, is I try to show the genealogy, but simplifying it by, I'm not going to show you, okay, I went to this database and I searched this and I found this. It's, and then I found this and then I learned this from that, so it's like you're showing the steps, but you're not going in depth in every step. And I thought that was really, really great, the way that they presented that. For me, as I'm thinking about this, I think I'm trying to decide whether it's going to be an A tier or an S tier, because it is a really, really good show. But at the same time, part of me feels like maybe it's not necessarily an S tier. But I can't really think of any good reasoning as to why it wouldn't necessarily be, other than, I guess, I'm always much more I'm much more like interested in watching Finding Your Roots or Who Do You Think You Are than episodes of Long Lost Family, but I still do really enjoy it. And I constantly will get inklings and like, oh, I'll watch some Long Lost Family. And, these are episodes where you can really cry a lot. And you know what? I think with the BBC one, I'm going to put it in S tier, because I feel like it is one of those shows that just, it's also just so unique in what it does, and it especially handles things really well. And I think that's going to play into also how I rate the US version, which is very similar, based in the same way. Like Long Lost Family in the UK, there are two hosts, and then like each episode focus on two different guests, and the hosts seem to kind of like have a focused guest that they focus on, but then they like switch or something. I don't remember exactly, but I will say the US version is definitely 100% rated lower than the BBC version. And part of it has to do with it has a bit more of the fluff. Yeah, I've always wondered if I'd ever say this publicly, but I guess this is the perfect place to say it. I will. Well, actually, we're not. I don't even know if it's going to go there yet. But I constantly joke with my parents about this, that with some of these shows, they do what I like to call cry bitch cry, where it's just they're in the background like, yeah, cry bitch cry. And like I feel like that's the issue with the US version, is they're always like really trying to get them to cry. Like with the Long Lost BBC version, when they guess, or when the hosts talk to the guests, they seem very worried about the guest reaction and just not overdoing it. And they're very empathetic and sympathetic to their guests. Whereas the US version, they're like, I don't remember the episode, but I remember there was one episode where it was like almost like the guest was like, but doesn't that make you sad? They're like, well, I mean, I've gotten over it and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But aren't you, how does it make you feel thinking about when you were a little kid and this and like just like it's like cry, bitch, cry. And like I don't know. I just always think of that when I see these episodes sometimes from the US version, because it really is. But the thing that really sets it further down more than anything, which kind of goes off of that, is in the BBC version, when they find someone's deceased that they're looking for, they always say, out of respect, we told them off camera. The US version, they always tell them on camera, surprise them on camera to get that cry bitch cry reaction. And that, I think, is honestly doesn't even allow it to be an A tier. It pushes it down to B tier. Honestly, it could even push it down further. Granted, I think, the show does a lot of good, but I think that is one of the biggest things that, it's a lack of respect for the guests, just in the impetus of, that perfect moment, the viral clip sort of thing. Which, it's like, especially knowing the BBC version does take the steps to ensure respect in those measures. So yeah, I don't know if my parents are watching this, but if they are, they're probably laughing that I actually said the whole cry bitch cry thing publicly. But I don't know. It's just, yeah, yeah. So, all right. I see a bunch of people laughing about that. Yeah. Now I almost guarantee, I think that'll actually be kind of funny when a lot of you are watching a lot of these shows now, where you do kind of have that, you're going to have that moment where you're going to think in the back of your mind, yeah, they're doing a cry bitch cry moment. They're really trying to pull those tears. I'm actually kind of almost crying, laughing about it right now. So. Okay. So moving on and continuing with the whole concept of cry bitch cry, we have relative race. Now, this logo is coming in really, really light. Actually, that looks a lot better. Yeah. So hopefully you all can kind of see that says relative race, because I think this is a transparent PNG that was uploaded. So it's, let's see there. You can see it better there. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Let's see something I can put it against. But so relative race is a show that is a US based show through BYU, Brigham Young University TV. And it's a show that is, it takes 4 teams of 2, and each team has at least one person on that team, sometimes 2, who, gosh, I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. All right, let me restart. So relative race is a show where they have 4 different teams, and each team has 2 people. Sometimes those 2 people know each other. Recent episodes or recent seasons, they don't always. They're kind of random people paired together. But in each team, there's always at least one person who has some sort of a story of that they're looking to find their family. Most of it is adoptee stories or orphan stories of those nature. Actually, I think pretty much all of them are. I don't know if there were any that were really that different. But the way that it works is that each team is given a car and a bunch of stuff, but they're not allowed to use their modern cell phones. They're given just really basic cell phones. They're not allowed to like use Google Maps or any sort of GPS thing. They only have to go by like regular maps, and they're just told a city that their relative lives in, and they have to race to that city. And they have it set up so that each day they have different what are the challenges they have to do before they're then given the address to where their relative lives. And then they have to go find that address using only paper maps and asking people for directions. And then whoever finishes getting to their relative quickest each day gets, a prize. The person who loses gets an X. And then after a while, if you get 3 X's, you lose the competition, you're out. And then whoever wins, you get $10,000 or something like that. And so, so it's a really interesting show because it's very different from everything else, because it's actually, they've made it into some sort of a contest sort of thing. I've done a lot of reactions to this show, and this is one that a lot of people are constantly asking me to do more reactions to. I might do them again. There's a new season coming along. Whether or not I do a reaction to that season or not, I don't know. We'll have to see. But it's going to be, really interesting. For those who aren't in the US, I don't know if you can see it. It's free to watch. So BYU TV. I think the only season that's not available is the first season, but otherwise you can see all the other seasons. And so, so you can see all the other seasons. So there's the 4 teams, and then as they go through and they race, they have to, do all these challenges, but then each day they meet a new relative. And that's the best part of the show. And there are some people that kind of have a few issues with the show and the way that they make it a challenge sort of thing. But I get it. You got to make it interesting, and it does do it in a way that is different, intriguing, but at the same time does give all these people the opportunity to find their family. So I haven't checked chat in a minute. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Relative race is totally cry bitch cry even during the goofy games. Yeah. Hey Charlie, good to see that you're here. Good to see that you're here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, Rosie's here too. Hey, Rosie. So, it's a great show. If you're not in the US, give it a try to see if you can watch it. Just, Google BYU TV, or it's just byutv.org, and you can find Relative Race. But if not, you may need to have a VPN saying that you're in the US. But amazing, amazing show. If you can't watch it and you're not, or if you can't watch through BYU TV and you don't have a VPN, you can watch my reactions to see get a feeling of the show. Which I think is actually one of the reasons why I had a lot of people who really liked my reactions, was because it actually gave them a chance to see not necessarily full episodes, but see a large portion of the episode. Because I was always basically trying to make it so, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do a reaction, but I don't want to, make it. Yeah, there we go. Make it so that, I'm just copying content. So I'm going to put the playlist in there for everyone to be able to check out. So, and even if you have seen it, maybe you'll enjoy my reactions. Then let me know, do you want me to do more reactions to it? So, but with all that said, I think I'm going to put Relative Race in A tier. And the reason why I'm not going to put it in S tier is that, well, it is an absolutely amazing show, and it's, it really is a great, great show. In terms of the genealogy stuff, you don't really get like that much genealogy. You do get more of the story, which technically gives you a little bit of genealogy. So, sometimes they'll show a little bit of stuff where it's like, here's a family tree, and here's, sometimes they'll have people that they visit that are just like, we're a cousin somehow, that, we're third cousins and we share these second great grandparents, but we're not quite sure how we're related or something like that. And just, not a lot of those, but, they try to add a little bit of genealogy, but it really isn't a lot. In all honesty, even Long Lost Family, I think, does a lot more of the genealogy aspect just in terms of showing the research. You know, every episode they're like, you know, so here's what we had to do. We had this information and we had to do that. And then that's how we came to this. And then I think another thing that a lot of people do have an issue with relative race is the challenges and stuff. Well, a lot of them are fun. In a sense, you know, for me, there's some challenges where it's like, I don't know, that doesn't seem like it's a good idea if you're having people meeting relatives. Like I remember, at least for me, I have, you know, I'm kind of a picky eater. I also, you know, I have a lot of different issues in terms of like, you know, I have hay fever. So like eating certain fruits and vegetables make my mouth, like, why can't I think of the terminology? You know, I get an allergic reaction in my mouth if I eat certain fruits or vegetables. Like I love peaches and nectarines, and sometimes I eat them and no issues. Other times I'll eat them and my mouth like just like oh, and gets itchy, and yeah, it's just terrible. But then on top of that, I'm also what's considered a super taster, which means I have a lot of taste buds on my tongue, which then means that certain tastes, I guess, are kind of more intense in a sense. It's not like I can taste things that other people can't necessarily taste. It's just more intense. So just some interesting stuff. But like for me, like because of that stuff, I see they have some of the food challenges. Like I remember there was one where it was like, you know, guess this thing, and if you can't guess it, you have to eat all of it. And it was stuff like, you know, they had to eat a whole thing of mayo. They had to eat like, you know, just like all sorts of gross stuff. And I was thinking, you know, how terrible would that be? You're like going to meet your relatives, or like, especially like, what if it was the day that you're meeting like your parent for the first time? Then you go and like the food they made you eat for that challenge doesn't go well with you. Next thing you know, you're just in the, you know, bathroom throwing up or so, you know, I mean, granted, I guess that's kind of slippery slope. But then the other thing is the last episode of every season, which is the final race, has nothing to do with the family stuff. Like the only thing they've been able to really make part of the family stuff is the fact that like they'll have a relative come to be part of their team. I think in the most recent one, they had like multiple relatives come for each of them. But then it also is just like, it's a lot of fun stuff. And like, yeah, I guess it makes it a challenge, but it's like, you know, with the teams, it makes it so that, you know, only the players that are really healthy and fit are going to really win the entire thing. Because there are a lot of people who get on this show who are older or have, you know, different disabilities. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about the season with the twins where one of the twins had, I think he had, was it cerebral palsy? And so, you know, it's just like, you know, they were, you know, they were already at a disadvantage. Granted, you know, I think a lot of people I've heard say that, you know, they were probably told ahead of time, like, hey, you know, we'd love to have you, but just know this is how we're doing it. But I have seen people complain about this same fact of like, you know, basically if you're not really, you know, fit and of a certain age, you're going to have much worse odds of winning this race, because, you know, a big part of the race in my mind is the, you know, okay, they've got to get from one city to the next city without GPS and all that. They have to navigate using an old school map, and they have to find the place that they need to go. And so it's, you know, that's the big part of the race. And so it doesn't matter how fit or whatever you are, that's more of a kind of mental thing in a sense, you know, being able to figure out the map and all of that. And so, you know, that's part of the race, but then it just, the way the challenges are set up, it just makes that much less of a part of the race, especially with the final day. So I definitely kind of feel along those lines. And because of all of those reasons, that's why I don't think it's going to be S tier. I think it's going to be A tier. All right, let's see. Oh, that's funny. Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy says, oh, Genealogy Roadshow is so much better than Road Race. I personally enjoy Relative Race way more than Genealogy Roadshow. I mean, obviously, Genealogy Roadshow is much more genealogy oriented. But I guess part of a lot of what I'm considering is how much do I enjoy watching the shows? And with Genealogy Roadshow, I mean, I've been scrolling through stuff to be like, what do I want to watch today? Is there anything I want to watch, and I'll see Genealogy Roadshow, because sometimes I go through PBS and I'll see it and I'll be like, nah, I'm not really interested. Keep going, Whereas, when Long Lost Family comes by every once in a while, whenever I see it somewhere, it's like, oh yeah, I'll watch some of that. Or Relative Race. All right. Okay, yeah. Karma says he had cerebral palsy. Also, is the first time that the other had ever driven. They'd never been outside of their state. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they had a lot of disadvantages with the race. So, I mean, I definitely, with all of my complaints said, I definitely understand that the people running the show are in a position of they got to make it a race somehow. And in all honesty, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to have the final day for them to do that? And I think there were like there was one race where it was like go-kart sort of race ending, which, then it doesn't really matter as much about how fit you are. It's more about how well you're going to be able to drive the go-kart or whatever it is. But like a lot of the ones in the final days, I feel like they do a lot of those ropes and ladder courses like out in the woods. I don't know if anyone's done a lot of those. I did a lot of those as a kid in Virginia and during camps and stuff. But basically, they tie you up with a harness and you climb up trees, and there's ropes and ladders that are ladders made out of ropes, and so that's kind of like a lot of those challenges. And so those kinds of challenges are the kinds where if you're not fit, you're gonna have a real difficult time. All right, so let's continue on. So now we're going to get into roots. And this one's kind of an interesting one because there's two versions. There's the one from the 70s, and then there's the more recent version. Now, I will admit that I have not seen the recent version. I saw the one from the 70s. In fact, I remember seeing that when I was a little kid. Gosh, I don't even know how old I had to have been, maybe 8 or 9 or something. But I used to live in a town in Illinois, right outside of Chicago, called St. Charles. And I used to go to the library all the time, and they had a lot of VHS tapes that were, educational based sort of VHS tapes. And they had the entire Roots series. And so when I was a kid, I liked to get the VHS tapes. And so I got Roots. I ended up watching all of Roots as a kid. And, for me as a kid, it was like, holy crap, this is wow. So, I actually, I've never really thought about it. I wonder if that does play any role in my intrigue in genealogy, because at that point, I think I had already been into genealogy because I first got into the idea of it from my cousin's bar mitzvah, where I saw the first time the line of my Nunes Vaz family tracing to the 17th century in Livorno, Italy. And, that was the thing that got me first really like, whoa, my ancestry goes back that far. And yeah, I guess, my parents' parents and their parents and their parents. And next thing you know, you're in the 1600s. But I imagine it did have an effect on me. It's been a long time since I've seen it, at least the full thing. I've seen a lot of clips of it since then, obviously. I know I've seen full episodes of it, when I was in high school, because, we watched it in different class stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was a good episode, or it was a very good show. And for those who are outside of the US who may not be familiar with Roots is actually the show that is noted as kind of like the impetus to modern American genealogy. Especially just in the sense of it becoming a much more common hobby. So like after it came out, all of a sudden everyone was doing genealogy, and it was constantly cited by people as, this is what got me into doing genealogy. I am going to rate the show an 8 here. Part of that just being that, just in the sense of, me wanting to watch stuff, I really have no, intrigue to be like, yeah, I really want to go back and watch through the old Roots. I watch a lot of clips and I have seen, long scenes and stuff, but it is a really, really good show, and definitely had an effect on me in some ways, but definitely, or not necessarily something that's like, oh yeah, I want to go and rewatch that again. But something that if anyone has never seen it, I highly recommend seeing it. Now, in terms of the most recent one, like I said, I have not seen it. I don't remember how long ago it came out, and it came out with there was like a lot of marketing behind it and people pushing it. And I feel like it didn't really make that huge of a splash, especially like in the genealogy community. It didn't seem to be a huge deal, I guess is a way to put it. So it's obviously going to go to the never saw. But yeah. So, okay. And now for the last two, we have the Roots Less Traveled and the Genetic Detective. And Roots Less Traveled is one that I've seen a bit. It was kind of like a new leaf. See if I can pull up the page for it. It was more recent. Yeah, Roots Less Traveled. Yeah, because I think the first one came out around like 2019. I guess 2020. I thought it'd come out earlier than that. But it was kind of similar to A New Leaf. I don't know if it was sponsored by Ancestry or not. I am guessing so, because that looks like Ancestry stuff in the background. But it seemed that Ancestry was sponsoring a lot of NBC stuff. And I saw a few episodes. Every episode would focus on different family, or it would focus on multiple different stories, if I remember correctly. So it'd be like, one episode would have like 3 or 4 different stories, and it'd be like a pair of relatives. Turn that off. Papa Murphy's. Everyone gets to see that ad for a second. But it would be kind of like a who do you think you are thing, in terms of they'd take them to the places, and together they'd kind of do the family history stuff, but they were only short, because it's 3 in an episode. So it'd be like, okay, so here's the first story, and they're going through and finding their information, and then they go into the next story, and there's like a whole different one, I guess. I never found it that intriguing of a show. It kind of had that NBC fluff feel to it. Did have some good amount of genealogy stuff behind it. Oh wow, it's got a whole minute. We'll wait a while. But yeah, it was never that amazing of a show, in my opinion. I never found it that great. Trying to think of much to say about it, honestly, because it was kind of like a mixture of Genealogy Roadshow and Who Do You Think You Are, in that, Genealogy Roadshow, you're going through a lot of different stories in a singular episode, whereas with Who Do You Think You Are aspect of it, they're kind of going on site to places. I don't remember if with Roots Less Traveled they actually spoke to any like archivists or anything like that. But let's see. So many ads. So many ads. Okay, so maybe I wonder if maybe they changed it around, because this whole episode seems to be about half siblings. that what I watched? Oh, you know what I think I watched? I think I watched one of these season 4 ones. Because I remember it was weird because when I watched it, it was like the people that they had on would be commenting about. That's the same people. Am I mixing it up? I wonder if I'm mixing it up. What did I watch? Unless maybe I'm mixing this up with a different show. All right, yeah, this is not. All right, you know what? I'm gonna have to watch this. I'm just gonna put it in never saw because I thought it was something different. And it seems to not be what I thought it was. So maybe there's a show I'm missing. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, what I thought it was like a half hour show, and they'd have like the first 6 minutes would be a story about somebody, and their family ancestry, and they'd like be with a relative of theirs. And they'd go and learn the stuff real quickly, and then the next block of the show would be a different group, and then the third block would be a different group. So I don't know. I'll have to look and see if anyone recognizes. Yeah, I don't know. Yo no say way. All right. And now for the last show, The Genetic Detective. And this one is probably the most different in the sense of that, you know, this one is talking specifically about crime cases as opposed to all the other ones are family history stuff. Well, I guess, a lot of them are very different. So The Genetic Detective is a show that is about CeCe Moore, and I think it's like 5 episodes, each episode talking about a different case that she worked on, and it goes into a lot of the genealogy work that she did behind it, the story of the case, and then the follow-up, from CeCe's investigative lead to then the law enforcement officers taking the investigation further and getting surreptitious samples or whatever they needed and confirming whoever it was, and then the full sort of story of it. And this one I think you can actually watch on Hulu if you have Hulu. Apparently you can watch it for free on ABC. Maybe it's not on Hulu anymore. Let's see. Yeah, watch it on ABC for free. I guess it was an ABC show. So six episodes. I'm not gonna do that. All right. So I thought that it was actually a really good show. This show came out while I was working as an investigative genealogist. So for me, it was kind of like, that's what happens. But kind of like most, true crime shows, it was just really fun to see, the full process of it all. Because every case is slightly unique in how things go down. And so there was a lot of really interesting stuff. And for me, I think the most interesting thing to see of The Genetic Detective is what law enforcement does after the investigative lead. Because like from my perspective, when I worked in investigative genetic genealogy, once we've gotten the lead ready, and sometimes it's, we've gotten a really good lead where we're like, here you go. You've got this very short list of people that we are extremely confident it's one of them. And then they go and investigate, and usually they can kind of figure that out pretty quickly. Sometimes it's more along the lines of, okay, we've gotten a step closer with these different things. Now we need to investigate further, and we'll do what's known as target testing. So we'll send law enforcement out to basically be like, okay, we're pretty sure it's somewhere within this family tree, but if you can go out to these relatives and ask them to target test, hopefully that will give us a better idea of how whoever we're looking for is connected into that tree. So whether it be us identifying a doe or, unknown human remains, or us identifying a violent perpetrator or a perpetrator of a violent crime. And so once we've given that investigative lead, whether it's super close or, somewhat distant, it varies on how those agencies continue in keeping us up to date. Sometimes it'll be months later, and then we get a call that, we did this, and it's solved. And it's like, whoa. Other times they work along with us the entire way. But more often than not, even if they do work along with us, giving us information, it's only tidbits here and there because, they're working along. It doesn't make sense for them every step of the way. We did this. Okay, we did this. We did this. So it's fun watching that show in the sense of seeing them take the lead and really going with it. And, when they get the suspects and interviewing them and all of that. So for me, that's the part that I enjoyed most out of that show. And, I thought that it was presented in a really good way. It was presented in a really intriguing way. It's been a while since I've seen it. I saw it all when it came out. And then after that, I don't think I've seen it since. So I only saw one watch through. But I remember that I really enjoyed the visualization that they did with the family trees and understanding clustering and things like that. And especially, I think there was one case where there was like a double cousins case thing where basically, when you're doing this type of work, you're looking for a marriage between two families. So, if you have genetic cluster over here and a genetic cluster over here, and you find a marriage between a member of this cluster and this cluster, that means that you're very likely going to find the person you're looking for as a descendant of that marriage, because only the people that descend from that marriage have those cousins A and cousin B, unless they have something weird going on, such as double cousinship. So double cousinship being, let's say you have a pair of sisters, you have a pair of brothers. They're not related to each other, a pair of brothers from family A, pair of sisters from family B. One brother marries one of the sisters, the other brother marries the other sister. So their children from both couples will have the same cousins on both sides because they're related. They're first cousins on both sides. So when that's the case, that can throw things off. And I believe that was what happened in one of the cases. Was they thought they had a really good lead, and so they did further target testing, but then the target testing didn't match up with what they thought. And so then it's like, what's going on here? And then they discovered the next marriage. And yeah, so really, really interesting. So I think I'm going to put the Genetic Detective as S tier. Yeah. So with that, that's pretty much, that's obviously everything that we had, but there were a few shows that people had mentioned. Of course, and I've lost all of them except one that I hadn't really heard about, that I'm definitely going to look into. So this was one of them, DNA Family Secrets, which seems to be a UK-based show that most recent episode came out in 2022. So, or wait, no, was that the most recent episode? What's the most recent episode? Why am I missing? Did they not list the episodes? Okay. Oh. Gosh, I guess they do have a lot of recent episodes. So, okay, so it's an ongoing show. I'll have to look into it, especially if it's a UK-based show. Yeah, hear other people tell me shows. Yeah, James Burton says, as much as I love Who You Think You Are and Finding Your Roots, The Genetic Detective may be my favorite. Loved it. Yeah, and it's kind of a shame that that Cece doesn't want to do further episodes of it. Funny enough, I remember when I first learned that Cece was basically, saying she was not going to do further episodes. I was like, I might be interested interested in being the genetic detectives and what, have another season. And, that'd be kind of a cool precedent to set for that show where they have every season, they focus on a different investigative genetic genealogist and their cases. Because each company does things slightly different in their, how they handle things. And, especially with some companies like the one that I worked at, DNA Labs International, having a lab and us actually taking stuff in and doing the extractions and working on new technologies. There's a lot each company could give. And I think it'd be really cool to kind of every season, different genealogists that they highlight. So, I'd love to see that. I'm not an investigative genetic genealogist anymore, but I have enough cases under my belt that I could certainly do a full, 5-6 episode season of cases I've worked that, yeah. So I would love to do that. Yeah. If anyone's watching that knows the producer's a genetic detective, tell them to hit me up. Yeah. So, okay. How long have I been going? Oh, wow. Yeah. Perfect timing. Just about to hit 2 hours. So, yeah. So this was a really fun stream. I was actually, for a while, I've been trying to think of something that, is not just building family trees. Granted, we love building family trees, but, when you're constantly starting on a new family tree, you're going over a lot of the same stuff. It felt like we're, every stream building a tree. It's like, yeah, we're looking at the census records and we're looking at the birth records. And then, it's like, a lot of the same stuff over and over. So, this kind of just gives a little fun. So if you have any ideas like this, like I did the geography quizzes, which I might do another stream where I do geography quizzes. I don't think there are any other tier maker ranking things. Oh, I'm not logged in. Oh, I'm going to have to log in. I needed to save. But yeah, so if anyone has ideas, I'd definitely love to see them, hear them. All right, come on. There we go. Let's see. What I'm doing right now, I'm just pulling up the tier maker search. But you can see, so we have genealogy sites, which we did. So yeah, yeah. And then genealogy television shows. But there really isn't, everything else is like, genealogy, other stuff. So yeah, I guess we've done all the tier rankings we can for genealogy stuff. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's stream. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully a lot of you learned about some new TV shows that you'll have to go and watch now. But I should be seeing you all next week. For streams. I don't know why. Anyway, I should see you all next week. Tuesday and Friday is planned, but the week after that will be the week of Roots Tech. And I'm hoping, not 100% sure it's going to happen. I've been working to make it happen. But March 1st, I'll try to do a live stream from Roots Tech. Now, if I do that, it will only be streamed through YouTube, just because of the limitations, unfortunately, with streaming with the tool. I have a DJI Pocket 2, and for some reason I can't stream that multi-stream. It's only YouTube. But hopefully I'll be able to do a live stream, which will be really cool, from Roots Tech. and you all will get to kind of get an in-person glimpse of it all. So you all have a wonderful rest of your Friday, or I guess for some of you it's already Saturday, or almost Saturday, but enjoy your weekend, and I will see you all next week. You have a